This conference will now be recorded.
It's all yours, Stan.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Don't believe we have any public comment. Do we have any disclosure of interest?
Nope.
Don, you good?
I'm okay.
Okay. Lexipol policy review. Jeff, you want to take this one?
Yeah.
Most of it's on here, so.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, all of you may be aware, may not be aware that Mary Gaziano brought up the fact that she believes any policy updates need to be reviewed by the police committee. So, there's a couple ways we could do this, I believe. Lexipol puts out policy updates about twice a year, about every 6 months, unless some are sooner because there's a change in case law or something like that. So the question is how are we going to review those through the committee? With the input of Attorney Gaziano, I would believe, she would be involved as well with some of that, just to make sure the legal side of it is well established. So I had the ability to download and print out what I call the blue line version of the policies. And in that blue line version, it shows the difference between the old version and the new version. So it will indicate in blue or red what changes were made. So when those changes get passed through to me, I could print those out, send them out to the committee members, or we could discuss them at the next police committee meeting, and then give people time to review those. If they have any suggestions or changes or thoughts on any of the changes that are coming through, then we could discuss them again at the next police committee meeting if there's any problems. Otherwise, I can make the changes. Doesn't take long. We either accept them or we modify them or we reject them. That's the only really options I have. If there's some language in there that somebody does not like or doesn't fit within our policy or what we believe is our policy should be, I can adjust those as well. When those are done, I send Attorney Gaziano a copy of the blue line version as well, so she sees what is changing. And then she would have the updated version as well once I made changes through the committee. And then those policies could be implemented with changes. A lot of times I see changes that are very minimal. Maybe the statute number it references has changed. Maybe a small verbiage change, but nothing huge that I've seen lately. Now, could that change with a case law being handed down? Yeah, totally possible. But if anybody else has any input on how we go about that, I would gladly take that.
Right now, how long have you been doing the update for Lexipol? Since the board has accepted the Lexipol policy.
How long?
Right?
I'm sorry, Stan, what was the question?
How long have you been doing the updates without the notification to the committee?
This whole time. All the updates were sent through to Attorney Gaziano for review. She received all the blue line updates, the comparison between the old and the new. So she's received all those or any updates that have occurred. If I don't hear a response from her, I basically update the policy and then implement it.
So now she's wanting to have it go through the committee. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, she wants to have it reviewed by the committee and then submitted to her afterwards. Okay. But obviously, I would submit the original changes that Lexipol made, so she sees what they have changed, and then she would get the update as to what any suggestions or changes that we made as a committee as well, just to make sure everything's on the, go in the right direction and within her thought process is what the policy should be.
Okay. Any input from the other committee members on this?
And I thought that's the way Todd was, I thought Todd was bringing these into our committee, wasn't he?
Yes. I've read a couple of them.
Right. But now
Okay,
she's
so we're just,
for us to go through it. He's brought it up a couple times as far as the updates, and I believe that we never really reviewed them. Just a matter of him notifying that there was a couple of changes to the policy. Now I believe that we are to review them and turn them over to Mary, or give them to Mary, so changes that we have. Basically, it was just Todd and Jeff doing all the reviews and changes.
Yeah,
okay.
Attorney Mary Gaziano suggested that they reviewed by the committee first, and then, like I said, if there's any input from the committee or thought processes on any aspects. Now, I didn't know he was sharing those with the police committee, which is fine. Like I said, they only come through a couple times a year, but sometimes they could be lengthy. Some of them, have 8 or 10 different policy changes. And like I said, some of them are minimal. Most of them are minimal. And they don't affect the policy that much, but there are some minor changes that do occur.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my recollection was Todd was bringing them in. I can remember the blue lines, and I remember there was nothing ever really substantial on the changes. So, yeah, I think we should just go ahead and do it that way.
Okay, sounds good. So then what happens, what I'll do then is when I get the updates, I'll print out or PDF the documents, the changes in whatever policies they are, and you guys can decide whether you want them emailed to you or I can print them out and provide copies to everybody.
That's probably best with everything going on now is to email it to us, review, and then discuss it and make sure that we have it on the
agenda for whenever. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Let's move on to number 5, vacation of
Accrual.
Issues that brought up. So go ahead, Jeff.
Well, the thing of it is obviously nobody's taking vacation time now because it's not that they can't, but being shorthanded and then nobody wanting to take time off during this time because there's really nothing you can do. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. I just asked, and we've discussed it about possibly if it was something the village would consider as extending that accrual through the COVID-19 restrictions, where we can continue to accrue vacation time. Now I understand we're allowed to accrue up to 252 hours, and I think there's 3 of us already that have topped out at 252. I've lost probably quite a few hours over the past month due to that, which I understand it. For me, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that so the guys are losing time because they can't take time off or don't want to take time off because there's not much they can do. So I just wanted to bring it up and give it consideration to the committee and see what you guys' thoughts are on that. I know it's going to affect the whole village as a whole because there's going to be more time accrued, which means they can take more time off in the end. And if the village doesn't want to put that out there, then it's a moot point. But I just wanted to bring it up. Anybody have any suggestions, ideas, or thoughts?
I guess, I don't want to be unsympathetic to the fact that we're going through a tough time right now, but this is a perpetual issue that keeps coming up. And had vacation been taken all along, we wouldn't be at a 252 hours limit. So And if we do it for police, we can't not do it for everybody else. I don't know if anybody else has got a limit or not. But
Right.
I mean, I have to say, I've got staff, we're all in the same position. I've got staff taking vacation days because they know they're not going to get them all in the year. And they just want a mental break to not have to think about work. So I don't know. I struggle with it because we've been around the block a couple times with this, but I don't want to be totally insensitive to the environment one.
No, I understand. I just, like I said, it was a thought process that came out, and I would put you guys and see what was said. If it's not something that anybody wants to even consider, that's fine.
Who else has thoughts on this?
If you're looking for a non-committee member, I'll give some thoughts. We have a rule in place because we don't want to go down that road again of people accruing and then having to pay them out again. We could make an exception because of this is a certain situation that nobody anticipated. You can take a couple of approaches. One approach is to say, you know what, they can't go anywhere, but they can still take time off. And the reason for time off is so that they have time away from the job and they can de-stress. They may not be able to go somewhere, but they can at least be away from the job and not have that stressful part of their lives for a period of time. Another idea is similar to what the federal government is allowing through sick time off, is we're having to hire back or employ our officers because during this time we want to make sure we have officers on duty. I don't know if we can apply this to any reimbursement by the federal government, because we feel that we need to have these officers on duty because of the COVID-19 situation. So that might be another option, is to try and see if we can get some of this time reimbursed. But those would be the two things. And the third option is just to say, that we would extend the accrual, but we would limit it to a certain period of time. They would have to use it and not be compensated for it. So they can't cash it in, but they can use it for time off.
How many officers are involved in this issue?
Well, counting myself, there's 3 right now that are at the top, at the 252. I know this is a sensitive subject because you have to think about the village budget. Obviously, this could be somewhat detrimental. If people take more time off, then we have to pay off other officers overtime or hire back time to cover those shifts. Even after this is over with, people might get the idea. And if we limited the amount of time off at any given time to say 10 days, nobody's going to take more than 10 days off at a time, 10 days in a row, then we can limit the coverage that would be needed for vacations. But like I said, I'm not dead set on this idea. It was something that was kind of brought up, and I thought I'd put it to you guys. And it's not going to matter to me either way. So I'm just trying to give some type of benefit. I know there's some agencies now, and I know that this probably won't occur here, but they're paying hazard pay. And that's for people that are still working, as far as first responders and stuff like that. And that I've seen that anywhere from 1% in a paycheck to a set sum, and I was just kind of looking towards that and say, is there some kind of benefit, we might be able to extend to the officers during this time?
Julie, have you heard anything through the finance committee about any of the government supplement or anything else like that could be applied to this?
Not outside of what Frank already talked about. I haven't heard of anything.
Yeah. Either by. Well, there should be some
Talking
sort
about
of
what Jeff just mentioned, it's a possibility that in lieu of paying, hazard pay, that you look at some percentage of accrued time going in lieu of hazard pay. So you could say that during this time that an officer, for every hour an officer works, that officer accrues blank hours of vacation time in addition over and above the 252, or you offer it to every officer, and so those that aren't even up to 252 would still get to accrue that extra vacation time because of the hazard, in lieu of hazard pay. And then those that are going above 252 would have that separate bank of accrued time that they would use in a specified manner.
Yeah, there'd have
everybody
to
in
be some
that
sort of a formula.
Right.
I mean, could you set it up as like a,
So
you
we
can
may
only
not
go up?
get,
Go ahead, Frank.
right, like you can, right, you would, as Don said, use a formula to say that they can accrue X number, and then you get to a point and maybe they cap out even with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just, the way I kind of looked at it was maybe like a percentage. You know, if you take the 252 and
Right.
find a percentage that can go above that number, and then allow that number to accrue to that point, to whatever percentage that is, and then cap it out again at that. I mean, I don't want to put an undue burden on the village for, by any means, because of the situation, but, it was just kind of an incentive, or a somewhat extended benefit for those of us that are, that are still working and,
So then, if we were to do this, we would have new limits for individuals, I assume, that we would always have to, manually maintain if they don't take vacation time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it might be too much of a nightmare to figure that out. I know sometimes it gets to be hectic for the payroll aspect of it, and to add another number in there might be too much.
Frank, what are people doing on hazard pay? I think it was you that talked about that, or whoever talked about that. Is that pretty widespread?
I think Jeff brought that up.
No, I had just seen it. Go ahead. I had just
Julie,
seen it through.
Let me jump in, Jeff, for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a meeting tomorrow at 1:30, a teleconference with the mayors and village presidents in Winnebago County. And also, I think Mayor Chamberlain from Belvedere. So I can ask them what they're doing with their police departments. And
I think that would be a good idea.
And then I can report back to this committee, what I find out. And then if you feel it's something that you want to bring forward to the board meeting, this coming board meeting to be brought up as an agenda item, or if you want time to consider it at the next police committee meeting, that's up to you.
I think it's a good idea, Frank.
Yeah.
So I just did I did a quick Google search. Basically, it's on policeone.com. They have local governments providing hazard pay stipends for first responders. And they actually list out by state. There is nothing in Illinois from what I see at this point from this website. Alabama's using it to some extent. Georgia, Kansas, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, and like I said, I'll just read a couple of them. Massachusetts statewide, more than 6,000 state healthcare workers represented by such and such. Hazard paid $10 per hour after an agreement between union and state. That's unionized, obviously. Burton City Council, Burton, Michigan approved bonuses of $1,000 for police officers, $250 for firefighters, and up to $1,000 for any city employee working above and beyond the call of duty. I understand some of these numbers. Mount Clemens, Michigan is $2 more per hour for firefighters and bus drivers. I mean, this is just kind of a snippet of what's out there. By this information that they've put together, there's nothing in Illinois that I see right now because they list them, like I said, by state. So there's some of them in Alabama, one-time payment of $500. Somerdale Council approved $1.50 an hour for hazard pay for city police officers, excluding overtime hours. So that's just kind of an idea that's out there. And I don't think we're in a position that we actually give a bonus or a percentage or a stipend at this point because we don't know what the revenues are going to be for the village after this is all over with.
Nope.
Well, let's find out what Frank finds out tomorrow, and then we'll address this at a later date.
Okay.
All right. Is that okay with the rest of the committee?
Correct. Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to the 2020 Tahoe update.
We should have that vehicle back tomorrow. The installer said he should have it done. We ran into some complications about getting equipment on a timely manner. I had to push where we purchased the computer from to get the antenna and items to us as soon as possible. The last item to come in was a power supply for the computer mount and system in the car, which came in 2 days ago. I took that up there. That should be the last of the equipment that needs to be installed in it. So we should be having that back here and available to us tomorrow. The vehicle still needs the graphics put on it, and I don't have a date for that because I have to contact Pro Graphics, who's agreed to do it at a cheaper price than most anyone. So it would just be a process of them coming out, taking some photographs of it, making sure the graphics going to fit on the vehicle the way we want them, and then have those installed. I will send an email out once the vehicle is here to my contact person with Pro Graphics and find out if we can kind of expedite that process as well. Once the graphics are put on it, that vehicle will basically be complete, and there won't be any more work that needs to be done to it to get it operational.
Once we receive that vehicle back tomorrow or the day after, that will be basically an unmarked pod that is usable.
Yes, it's unmarked. The only thing it won't have right now is the computer from the car is having software installed in it at Rockford IT. It will then have to go, the computer itself will then have to go to Winnebago County IT to have programs and software put on it. Hopefully that won't take a lot of time, but the vehicle could be used and operational because a computer from one vehicle could be placed in another, and it can be put out on the street and used for patrol operations.
Okay, good. All right, visitor update.
So as was spoke about before, you know, the resolution was passed prohibiting any door-to-door sales. I just wanted to update you on that. I had one individual that called me back who had actually put his application in prior to that resolution going into place. That was the one that I had chosen to deny due to some information that was lacking on the application. I spoke to that individual. He says, well, I've never been denied before. I said, well, because of the incomplete nature of the application, that's why it was denied. I said, at this point now, there is a prohibition resolution out there from any door-to-door sales. I suggested that he keep an eye on our website, the village website, to see if when that resolution is lifted or those prohibitions are lifted, and then he can reapply. I did not allow him to submit a new application because I'm not going to hold on to him and then have to watch it myself to determine when that's lifted. I put the onus on him to keep track of that, and then he can resubmit an application when the time comes. The letters went out to two other solicitors that filled out applications. I explained to them about the resolution. in a letter to them, and I also provided a copy of the resolution to them as well, and suggested they check the website, within a period of time to see when that resolution may be lifted. As far as that goes, we have not received any new applications, and I don't expect to see that. We have had some complaints of people still going door to door. Obviously, they're not aware of the situation, and when those people have been identified, they've been advised of the situation. And there was a group of 3 people going to door at one time. I know Julie called me on one, and we identified those people and advised them of the situation. So hopefully we won't have any more problems with that, and hopefully the slowing of the roofing contractors actually working now instead of trying to sell jobs might slow that down as well.
Okay, move on to Chief White's report.
So I got an email from Mark Carner with the Sheriff's Department, basically inviting me to a teleconference tomorrow at 1 o'clock on how the enforcement of the mask in public issue is going to go. I don't know how others may look at it. I don't want to give my opinion. It's basically how is that going to be enforced countywide to make sure that those restrictions are abided by. Obviously, how, where, and when those are going to apply, what type of enforcement is going to take place. I know the governor has asked, for voluntary compliance by the public, and then that officers that deal with people that aren't in compliance to have some compassion. I do know there was one jurisdiction, I do believe it was in Texas, that a judge had handed down a $1,000 fine for people who not wearing their masks in public. So I don't believe it's going to reach that extent, but that's just to help everybody be consistent with how the application of that executive order is going to play out. So I just wanted to bring that up.
When you get done with that meeting, once you get the information, you send it out to village president and the Ps so we know what's going on as far as by email, please.
Sure, I sure can. I will definitely will. I'll put some information together and I'll send it out to all the committee members and President Eubank.
Is that stuff that should go on our website too, or is there going to be enough information from the state to get people informed about this?
Julie, let me jump in for a second. Jeff, let me jump in for a second.
Sure.
We received, everybody, I think, subscribes to the IML, and Brad Cole had sent out an email message, his daily ones, and I think a couple days ago, in one of them, they had a model ordinance to implement what Governor Pritzker is going to implement on May 1st for wearing face coverings. And I sent that to Mary Gaziano to prepare an executive order that I would sign starting May 1st to coincide with what the governor is requesting that we do for face coverings. So that way we would have something locally that we would follow. And then I also asked her to prepare an ordinance following the model ordinance that was drafted by IML for us to consider on May 11th at the board meeting so that we could enact it. So I will try and forward that to everybody so they can see the model ordinance, but that's the plan. So whatever you find out, Jeff, tomorrow at your meeting at 1 o'clock, we may or may not need to add some of that language to an executive order or to our ordinance.
Okay. I think the meeting tomorrow is to get a consensus between all the chiefs in Winnebago County, and I think Boone County as well, to be consistent with how it's going to be enforced or to what extent it's going to be enforced. So I don't know how that's going to go, and I'll definitely try and record get as much information out of that as I can and pass it along to everyone. And I will include Attorney Gaziano as well.
All right, thank you. You have anything else?
I don't think so. I don't have any more because it'll be wait until the meeting and find out what's said and what happens in that aspect. So.
All right, we'll move on to new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. I still have some more topics under mine. I'm sorry, Stan.
Oh, that's fine.
So Teacher Appreciation Week. Superintendent Schwoko contacted me. At one time, they had thought of doing a parade with teachers in cars going around neighborhoods and saying hi to their students. Well, they've kind of modified that a little bit. What they want to do, and I'm in agreement with it, and then it got some input from Frank, and he believes it would be within the restrictions that are out there. Each respective school is going to have teachers standing around their schools. They're going to have masks on. They're going to be 6 feet away from each other. The social distancing is going to be in effect. And then they're going to allow parents to bring their children around the schools, so they can at least see their teachers if they want to. I don't know what the teachers have planned, if they're going to have signs and stuff like that and waving at the students or whatever. The vehicles will not be allowed to stop in any manner. It's just going to be a slow creep around the schools from what I understand, and I'll have officers at the schools and the locations to make sure it doesn't affect the traffic in the adjacent streets. But just so you're aware, that's going to go on May 8th between 2 and 4 p.m. unless something happens between now and then. It could be weather related. They cancel it. I'm not sure. But at this point, that's when it's going to happen in the time frame. The next part is the CAD RMS Go Live. We know that has been put on the back burner for now. They had originally put out a Go Live date of April 7th of this year, and obviously with the pandemic that's going on, they pushed that back because there's no ability to meet and train officers in a larger setting. And it's just not conducive to have 2 or 3 officers in a large room to train. So that's been put off. They're looking at the go live date now of early August of 2020. I spoke to Glenn Trommels yesterday on the phone. He says, we were kind of aggressive on a June date that he had set up, but he says that's not gonna happen because of the extensions of the executive orders. So he's talking about putting a video training program together, just something simple so officers can actually have something to look at. We have looked at some other things as well with the input of Chief Schelling and Chief Smith from Pecatonica and Duran. Have some training classes of some sort where there's screenshots of different things from different parts of the RMS programs, so people become familiar with it and stay familiar with it. If you're trained on it one day and you don't use it for 6 months, then you kind of lose that knowledge. So we want to make sure everybody keeps up to date, so when that go live date does come around, they at least have a basic knowledge of how the system works. So that's where we're at with the CAD RMS. The last thing I have is the Department of Justice just put out the bulletproof vest program that's available again that we can apply for. I have to check everybody's vests to see when they set to expire. So if we need one that's not going to expire they are going to expire in 2 years, then we can apply to have those replaced. I believe it's a 50%, 50% paid by the village and a 50% paid by the Department of Justice. So just putting that out there now. I'm going to start that process and see if we have any that are going to expire within the next 2 years. I believe mine and the former Chief Stockburgers was replaced in 2008. A couple of them were replaced last year. So we may not have any that we can replace in that time period, but we'll definitely try and get some some grant money if it's at all available to us. That's all I got, Stan.
Okay. Anybody else with, for new business?
Nope.
Okay. Frank, I'm turning it over to you.
Well, the next item you have on the agenda, Stan, is executive session for police chief update. So someone will need to make a motion to go into executive session for the meeting to consider the appointment of a person to fill a public office or vacancy in a public office where the public has, or the public body has the appointing authority. In this case, police chief is a public office. So
moved.
someone to make that motion.
So moved.
Mr. Combs made that
Don.
motion.
I'll second.
All right, so just, we're still on the recording. What we're gonna do is go into closed session. I'm assuming that it'll be Stan, Don, Julie, and you're inviting me to be in this as well?
Correct, yes.
And then we will go into closed session. It's 5:38 p.m. I'm gonna turn off the recording now of the meeting so we can go into a different recording for the closed session. So Jeff and Nick, I'm gonna have you guys sign off right now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yep. Have a good day.
You too.
All right.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hopefully I didn't erase the previous part, but we are now back in regular session of the police committee meeting. It's April 29th, 2020 at 6:33 p.m. And we still have Julia O'Rourke, Don Kimes, Stan Malagranda, and then guest Frank Eubank attending. So at this point, I think Stan, it's back to you on the agenda.
Okay, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so I'm going to stop the recording and thank you everybody for attending the meeting.
Yep.
All right, thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yep,
Aye.
thank you, Frank.